Welcome to Dive Deep. I'm your host, Caleb Swartz. Our goal here at Dive Deep is transformation. And over the course of this current sermon series, we're going to explore the transformation that Pastor Arlie and Christ Wesleyan Church have experienced during his leadership and care. The next episodes will have two main focuses. We'll have folks who have spent some time with Pastor Arlie call in and share memories they have from the past 40 years. And then we'll play those for you to hear and get Pastor Arlie's response to those stories. Then, Pastor Arlie's going to share some additional background of what was happening during the development of each sermon. Kick back, relax as we take a journey down memory lane in the vintage collection. Pastor Arlie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Caleb.
Yeah, today we have Alice Smith, who has called in just to share some thoughts on past sermons that you shared with her. So let's listen in.
All right,
as
I
she
trust
speaks.
Alice. I trust Alice.
Well, good.
Good morning, Pastor Arlie. As you know, I have been attending CWC since Pop Davis was the lead pastor and you were his young assistant many, many years ago. One thing that has never changed is your love for our God, your love for your precious family, and your love for the church. As I reminisce about the many messages I have heard from you, I cannot pick out a favorite message or series, as each new series that comes along is my new favorite. But this one message comes to mind, BC, before children. You may remember it or you may not. You had preached a sermon where you made mention of how to raise children. I remember after church saying to someone, "You can tell he has no children," and by that time I had a son, so I had a little experience. Years later, you mentioned in a message how you thought you knew all the answers in raising children until you had your own and your views changed. I laughed to myself when you said that, as I remembered the first sermon, not verbatim, of course, but the gist of it. As you know by now, each child is different, and there is no one-size-fits-all set of directions. One of many things I am thankful for is how I have grown as a Christian under your preaching. I always learn something new, and I know it encourages you when you see your congregation growing in the grace, the knowledge, and the love of our Lord Jesus. You have done well, Pastor Arlie. Thank you, and God bless.
Oh, that's really true.
That's really funny.
Oh no, it's absolutely. I remember those early days and before children, and I gave basically 10 commands. Like, here's how we do. And then after had our first child, I gave 10 guidelines. And then after a second, I said, I'm not going to be speaking on parenting anymore.
Oh, my goodness.
So
that is too funny.
Yeah.
And when I heard her first share that, I thought, wow, there's a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of wisdom. Because I can remember, I'm not that far removed from the entrance of children into my life. And
oh, yeah, you could tell everybody else how they should raise their children.
Oh, it's so clear. I can tell.
It's so easy. I see the mistakes all over the place.
Let me tell you what you're doing wrong.
Yeah, here's what you need to fix. Don't let them be screaming like that in public. Here's what you need to do.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Lay down the law.
I had lots of commands.
Yeah.
And guidelines.
And then
none.
And then nothing. Just good luck.
None.
Good luck. God be with you.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, that's fun. Well, thank you so much, Alice, for sharing that with us. And so the message that you spoke this last weekend was from 1995.
That is correct.
Let me give you a little cultural background of 1995. I think you're going to enjoy this. ER, Seinfeld, and Friends were the top TV shows. The History Channel, eBay, and Yahoo all debuted. O.J. Simpson trials, 1995.
Yes.
The Macarena went viral. Toy Story, Apollo.
Macarena.
Maybe we'll capture you doing the Macarena and put it up for everybody.
There you go.
Okay. Toy Story, Apollo 13, and Braveheart were released. Amazon sold its first book.
Wow.
To think about that in the context of 2021 and
that's for sure.
How big Amazon is now. Isn't that crazy? Well, that was 1995 in U.S. news. What was going on in 1995? First, I'm curious, just in the church at large, what was happening?
Large.
Not CWC, but
Oh.
just the church kind of in American culture or across the world that you remember.
I don't know.
Wasn't that the era of Promise Keepers?
Yeah. We did a whole bunch of those. We did 2 busloads that went to Promise Keepers back then.
Yeah.
That was a big deal. That was pretty awesome. There was a number of those that happened over a few years. That was really quite a sensation.
Tell people, what was the thrust or the gist of Promise Keepers? Because there's a whole generation that doesn't know anything about it.
Oh, yeah. It was just a men's group that met together to help men be better husbands, better fathers, better leaders in their community. So that was the whole thrust of it. And it was powerful. There's something about men getting together that is just pretty awesome. And especially because in the church, women seem to be more prevalent than men. Just like at the tomb, there were more women than men.
Wow, that's an observation right there, isn't it?
Hello.
Wow.
And so it's kind of in the church. It's the same way and has been. Well, that really focused on men becoming stronger leaders and stronger spiritual men. And it was powerful. It was powerful.
It's interesting because as I talk to a lot of guys now, I hear stories of, Promise Keepers was a big change for me. It was a big moment, or it was an awakening. It opened my eyes.
Yeah.
I hear that often.
Yeah. Men worshiping, men singing. It was. I remember the Million Man March they did on DC at that point, and there were so many men like in the subways. We were singing across the back and forth to each other.
Wow.
It was just like, it felt like there were Christian men everywhere.
That's really
unashamed.
Right.
I love Jesus. How about you? And then they would echo back to us, well, I love Jesus. How about you? Across the subway. It was just amazing. Yeah. Powerful moment.
Yeah. It feels like something like that would be so needed right now.
Yeah.
What about at Christ Wesleyan? What was going on here or in the Milton community, 1995?
We were in our thrust of like explosive growth that was happening for us. Some of our largest growth years that were happening right during that time period. Like, I don't know, probably 300 people. We had 100 added to that. So like 25% extra came in. It was just, exploding. Financially, it was exploding. Numerically, it was exploding. It was just incredible stuff that was happening right then. We had just, Keith Tyler came in 92. And so we were just experiencing some pretty exciting things as far as our, worship arts and all that was a part of that kind of thing. Staffing, the need was continuing to increase because we had so many people coming in. It wasn't too far, a few years later, then we were actually not only doing 2 services, we went to 3 services. We did everything we could possibly. Our foyers were little and tiny, and people were jam-packed in there waiting for the next service to start. And it's amazing. Like, none of that was a hindrance. It's, today you would say, oh, well, that's your obstacle. The reason you're not growing is you don't have a large enough foyer. You have too much crowd. No, none of that seemed to matter. It's just amazing.
It's just interesting. So I've been reading 1 Corinthians just about the wisdom of the world versus God's wisdom.
Absolutely.
And how it's fluid. And that kind of fits right along with that of, logically you look at it and say small foyer equals no more growth, but that wasn't the case.
No. I mean, there were so many drawbacks to what we had then, but the growth was explosive. It was pretty awesome.
How were you guys spending time together? What kind of ministries were going on? What was your gathering like outside of Sunday morning?
I mean, we had a lot of classes that were happening during those 90s. Like we called them Christian life classes, and, they were kind of like a Sunday school class, but we gave electives. People could choose what kind of, class they wanted to go to, and we always offered, a variety of different things. And there was just a lot of, I would say, exercises that we did that drew us together.
Yeah.
During the 90s, we had our hospitality night that was once a month on Sunday night. you had 2 or 3 families into your home if you were a host or a guest. My wife, Sharon, she kind of agonized over matching all these people up. And so people made relationships and connections because we had Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. So you had more than just one time you saw this person during the week.
Right.
And so you started to build these connections and relationships that were, I think, are lasting kinds of things that even to this day, people made connections because of those time periods.
Well, I can tell you, having come almost 2 decades later, I still hear about hospitality nights.
Isn't that crazy?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really neat.
Yeah, so there were a lot of things during those 90s that I think were kind of the ways of bonding and building kinds of relationships.
When you talk about them, it reminds me a lot of the one another's that you referenced.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a lot of that embodied.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you kind of reviewed the scriptures of the one another's, I'm curious, what relationships have given you the most opportunity for growth or practicing these one another actions? And I can think of, like, an obvious one would seem to be you and Sharon, obviously marriage. But outside of that, was there a mentor or some friends from the church or even people from the community that gave you the opportunity to do some of these tougher one another actions?
Yeah, I would think that there were a lot of things that were happening, especially in those time periods where we were all kind of trying to practice the one another's more, offer hospitality to one another. That was that hospitality night. And so that kind of thing was building, forgive one another. We did these services. They were, I forgot what they were called, kind of, I think a love fest or something like that. Anyway, where you took bread and you broke bread with one another.
Interesting.
And so, like, you would especially go to someone if there was maybe a problem or forgiveness that needed to happen.
Yeah.
You would go and offer that to the other person and just say, I need to ask you to forgive me. I was whatever. Those kinds of things. We did that. Or if you just wanted to say, I want to appreciate your love for the Lord and how God has worked in your life, and I'd like to break bread with you. And you'd offer it, and they would take it. And those were, some pretty cool bonding moments that the church kind of experienced. And so I did a lot of those things, especially Sunday nights, because Sunday night I had the opportunity to kind of be as diverse as we wanted to be. And, you weren't kind of like fixed on quite the same schedule that you would be just on Sunday morning. And so there were a lot of cool things that happened like that.
That's really, really neat. So as you talked about really being a kingdom united, not divided, under one vision moving forward, if you were to pick out one topic or cause or a vision that the church, not necessarily Christ Wesleyan, but just the church needs to rally behind moving forward, what would you foresee that being?
I think it's still the same. The Church United, I think right now, what's dividing us is we have so many different visions, like so many different perspectives, so many different ideas of how things should be handled or whatever, instead of really focusing on the one main thing that God has called us to reach the lost and to make a difference in the lives of those around us. If we could just focus on that and get back to that, I think a lot of the other things could be inconsequential. And I believe we could really make a difference in the world around us. I just think we have too many things that distract us from what the main vision for the church really is.
Yeah.
And let's get back there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Pastor Arlie. And thanks for spending some time with us today on CWC Dive Deep. Join us next week as we continue sharing memories from the vintage collection. We've got more good stories to share in the weeks coming up, so be sure to tell others about the podcast so they can listen in. And if you've missed past episodes, check those out at cwc.life/dive-deep. Have a great week.